So hello fellow gardeners. So today is an impromptu backyard garden tour on a project we did about a year ago. I naturally do a walkthrough about a year. I do a 6-month and a year walkthrough on all of my projects just to kind of see, how things are growing, if everything's doing what it's supposed to do, seeing if we're checking in on, anything that might have disease or any natural problems that we have in Florida and kind of cutting those off as they go. And everything looks so beautiful, so lush, so full. I thought, you know what, let me pull this camera out and just take you on a quick update of how everything's growing in. So if you guys have a very small backyard space, but you spend a lot of time there and you want some concealment from your neighbors, maybe they're all the way around you, maybe it's just a giant full screen like, Randy and Marianne have to deal with. Then check out this video because this might be really for you. There's a lot of vertical material used in here, so you can really get a lot of jam-packed material into a very small space. I'll be sure to list the names there. If you want more details, check out the previous video of the initial planting, because then you really get a chance to see what that looked like when we started, and then what you get in about a year. And then I might do like a 3-year update, so you guys get to see what that looks like after all of the houses go away from around you because you're nestled in a tropical rainforest. So I'll flip this camera around. Bryce is having lunch with me today, so I'm going to see if I can get him to do a little bit of work for me and shoot some of the wide angles. So the camera's not shaking in your hand, and you're not Blair Witching it. So all right, you guys, I'll see you in a sec.
Oh, is this thing on? Hey you guys, just wanted to pop in real quick and tell you to like and subscribe if you haven't, and to hit that notification bell. Hey.
Are you ready?
You ready?
You want to check out some plants and trees?
There you go.
Thank you. Thanks for that. So one of the very first things that I look for when I come back to these projects months later is how well things have established, how well the plan has come together. Because when I create these designs, there's definitely a method to the madness. There's definitely a sense of layering and making sure that that I'm putting everything into the proper placement, that I don't want something to be such high maintenance that it's overgrowing the thing behind it. So that is super, super important for me to kind of just always check in and make sure that that's happening a year later. And I'm very pleased to say it is happening on this project. This is a very tough project because it's not a lot of space. I did not have a lot of room to layer on some of those projects where I have large pieces of property, and I can really dial it in and just put one layer in for the next layer and for the next layer, and I have all the room in the world to work and budget to spend. Those projects are much easier to really dial that in. But when I'm working in a narrow space, I have to be very, very diligent on making sure, for instance, these gold mounds that I have here, these gold mounds easily can stay at 3 foot tall. You can maintain them. They'll be happy at 3 foot tall. They do a nice job of staying a bright color, but also kind of staying in their lane. So they're not going to get crazy big. They're not going to be outgrow my anti-lose and quarter lines and be up into this range like something like my firebush would. So those firebush are going to do what they're meant to do. They're going to get 5 foot tall because why? These Pygmy date palms that are here, which are outperforming, they're doing so well in this environment right now. They're going to max out at 12 foot in height. But when they do that, they're going to leave me with about a 5.5 foot trunk. So what we don't want to do is lose our coverage and then the pool screen comes back into view. We want this to be 12 foot by 10 foot. Yes, that's what Pygmy date palms do. They offer you a nice bit of dense coverage in one solid grouping, so it kind of gives you that instantaneous buffer. But then again, you do see that trunk at the bottom, unless you put something like this as a skirt. So these are dwarf firebush, and I use them because they're fantastic, thick, dense buffer. They're just coming out of their bloom, but they bloom a gorgeous, gorgeous orange and red flower because this is such a nice sunny spot right here. They're going to be very, very happy as a nice swath in front of that. So you can kind of see the wall it's going to create, right? With 2 things, 2 plants, this and this, you can create pretty much a solid wall, which is really hard to do in Florida's, tropical setting. Normally we need to really layer things in to make that happen. And then you can kind of just do that as a rinse and repeat, I can do that with these guys here. These Trinets do the same thing. I can keep them at 5 foot, nice and easy, maintain them that way. They're not going to get woody or leggy, keeping them at that height. and then this tree is going to connect with this tree over here in no time, and we've got this tall wall of pygmy date palms in a nice staggered grouping so it doesn't look like a hedge. And then we've got a polished grouping of these guys mixed with these guys, which is in the same boat, easily maintained at 4 or 5 foot tall. And then you guys kind of see the method come together. The trees are staggered forward and backwards to make the curve. But overall, it's just kind of, if you look at it from the seating section, you can kind of see it start to come together. You can see the wall happening of pygmy date palms as the understory plantings start to flush out. We've got some time before they become a nice solid grouping, but they will absolutely become that grouping that we're looking for. So once again, it's the same steps that I use over and over again. The very first thing that I look for is establishment. Have things grown in? Have they established well? Have they rooted in? Are they not competing with their neighbor? And then the second thing is is it underperforming or overperforming? I'm always kind of, finding, even after all of these years, I'm trying to make sure that the plants that I'm putting underneath to create that wall, they're not struggling because they're underneath a plant group. You want to make sure that if you're going to plant something like the dwarf firebush, it's got to be in direct sunlight, because if not, it'll be a spindly mess. So it's understanding your environment and what you have to work with. So you don't want it to get too big for the space. You don't want it to be too small for the space or too spindly for the space. That's why I try to give you guys as much information as I can when I'm kind of giving you the garden tours. So you can kind of see behind the curtain of what things are meant to do. You can take very simple plant material, put them all together as a tropical foliage as a tropical buffer, but you just want to make sure that you have the right plant in the right place, and that way long-term benefits, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 10 years later, those layers are doing what they were always intended to do. They're not outperforming, underperforming because you put them in the wrong spot. So I try not to harp on it, but I do try to explain that, so that way if you guys are designing your own space and you don't have a lot of space to work with, hey, these are things that you can use. They're tough, they're strong, and they work well together. So this is a good companion grouping of a plant mix of things that I think that you can easily use. And then the last thing that I look for is obviously, is there something that's struggling? Do we have disease on something? Does something have some type of wind damage or irrigation damage because it's drying out or too wet? And in this particular instance, we do. So I'm gonna have to get with Randy and Mary Ann on this poor guy here. So it looks like this triangle fan palm has gotten some storm damage, and it's affected the canopy. This one was broken when I got here, so I did cut this guy off. And it looks like the center and the heart is still in good shape, so we didn't lose the tree. However, you can tell in looking at this that this has not grown, this trunk. And then if I move this, I can see too much movement in this space, which leads me to believe this area is just getting way too much water. It's too moist right in this particular spot, because if you come over here, and this is one of the smaller of the triangle fan palms that we've got, you can see the difference in this size of this base. This tree has grown in 11 months like it was intended to, and it's very sturdy. It's not going anywhere. So so you want to check for those kind of things. So we're going to cut the irrigation back on that entire zone over there, and then see if there's any breaks or if there's any other problems for that particular spot. But so those are the things that you kind of check for. Hey, why is that not doing as good as this? Or so when you're in your garden, keep those eyes out, because it doesn't take long for something to happen. I wish I'd caught that sooner and realized that that area was a little bit too moist, and we had a little bit too much weakness in the canopy. So, but it's still alive, and we are able to catch it and hopefully rectify it now. So, well, that's kind of what I do on my inspections, and I hope that was just enough information, a little bit of a sneak peek of an updated tour in this backyard, that it might have helped you guys when you're, putting together your backyard buffer. So do not forget to like, and if this is your jam and this is things that you like to do, then don't forget to subscribe, because this is what I like to do. I like to talk about plants and trees and landscaping, and do my best to educate anybody who might be interested in that same field. So share your comments with me, your questions, and I look forward to seeing you in the very next video. Take care.